Hello, welcome. I'm Kamira. I'm here with Danielle Matthew, and we are talking bullying today. Our subject today is Let's Talk Bullying, and we're talking about bullying for a couple of reasons. Um, for I want to welcome you to our discussion. In case this is your first time, I want to let you know that you are watching Your Team for Parents magazine Tuesdays with Kamira, and I am Kamira. We are talking bullying because bullying is a factor in the youth mental health crisis, and we are in the midst of a youth mental health crisis. Danielle's going to tell us more about that. She's going to help us define it, and she's going to help us know, and us being the adults and teen and tweens lives, how we can help our children no matter what side they may fall on this bullying crisis. They could be being bullied, they could be a bully, or they could be a bystander witnessing this behavior. So she's going to help us figure all that out. But before we do that, I'm going to welcome Danielle to us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. This is such an important topic. But before we delve in, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
So I've been in the field for over 25 years as a marriage family therapist. And about 5, 6 years ago, I decided to go into my own business and leave mental health in like nonprofits. And I recalled I was bullied as a kid, and it was so impactful to me, the experience that I had and how it actually helped me grow, and I felt like it still was there with me, and I felt like I needed to do something about it for others. And so I worked on a program at first, and then I wrote a book called The Empowered Child: How to Help Children Cope, Communicate, and Conquer Bullying, because I don't want people to feel like I did, which was lost and not knowing parents what to say to their kids knowing what to do. It was so impactful. So it's been a big part of my professional career. And I see teens in my practice, and I also that have anxiety and depression. And I have a new business called the Child Parent Educator Collective, which is really bringing some of that together in a seminar series that I do with my business partner, Dr. Eve Lauren Goldstein. And we really talk about different topics, and we do a 360 approach because we really feel it's important to talk to educators, to parents, and to children. So we have a common language going on given this youth mental health crisis. We really want everyone to have skills to get past this time.
Do you have that's I'm catching you here. Do you have a copy of your book to show everybody? And I will put up the link.
I do, but it's in the other room, and I'd have to go get it. So if you want me to, I can, or I know we have a link that we can look at for it. Absolutely. The book has a lot of different types of dialogues in there. It's based on a week of my program called the 3 E's: empathy, empowerment, and engagement. And so the book talks about what each of those are and talks about examples of each, so parents and educators can really learn how to talk to kids and teens about bullying.
Okay, great. You don't have to have the copy of the book. I do everything via Kindle, and so it's rare for me to be able to hold up the book, and I meant to ask you about that. That's okay, but we have the link in the comments section. For those of you who are used to watching every week, you'll see that I am putting the links instead of the amazing Jessica, so you'll have to be patient with me this week as I go back and forth to make sure you get all the information that you need. Let's start off with the very simple question. What is bullying?
So bullying is when someone has power over someone else over and over again. It's not a one-time issue. We call that a conflict resolution situation. But when it's bullying, this person has power over them, and it's repeated. So the parts that are important to remember with bullying is that it's repeated and someone has power over somebody else. And usually kids who are bullied, sometimes the person who bullies finds some weakness they think it is in somebody else, and that's what they use to go after them. And it can start and stop again. So it's never something, I always want to tell this to parents, that necessarily stops. So it's always good to practice and really work on the skills. And that's what the 3 E's really is, which is the empathy and asking kids how they feel instead of telling them how they feel. Like, I'm wondering if you feel this way about this, and then giving them the power to tell you how they feel versus, the whole idea of telling them how they feel and then really empowering them. Hey, how do you want to handle the problem? Do you want to role play some examples? If you are approached this way or this happens online, you can respond in this way. What do you want to do? And then the engagements, the follow through to that plan, which is, did it work? Did it not work? Do we need to go back and do it again? Because with bullying, we really do have the stopping and starting of that.
Okay. You mentioned that bullying is not a one-time conflict. Can you please tell us the difference between conflict and bullying? Because we, as the adults and usually parents,
Right.
we're trying to suss that out. Is this bullying, or is my child just having a conflict and they don't get along with this person? Or, what is the difference?
So conflict resolution issue is when it's two people that are of equal issues that are going after each other, where it's equal power. So they really are both at fault and have a conflict that they have to resolve, and how they resolve it is really about that equalness in what's going on with both of them. Bullying, it's not that. Bullying is really someone is having power over someone else. It's not like, conflict that can be resolved, and it goes on and on and on, and it's not a one-time event. And so that's really the distinction for people to understand, because a lot of times, you're right, people call things bullying and they're not necessarily bullying, they're conflict resolutions. And I'm not saying even if a one-time thing happens, it's okay. And if someone else feels like they were mistreated, because sometimes they don't feel it's an equal power balance of what happens. But if it continues on and continues on, it really becomes a bullying issue more than a one-time issue. So that's really how we distinguish it. And it's important to know that difference, because that word bullying gets used a lot, and sometimes it is bullying and sometimes it's not.
Mhm. Mhm. That's good to know. Are there different types of bullying?
Yes, so there's 4 types of bullying. We have the physical bullying, which is where we can see that, where people are hitting or kicking each other, or, physically hurting somebody. And then we have verbal bullying, which we can hear, which is calling people names, being mean to people, saying rude things to them. But the last 20 plus years, the 2 that are most significant that I want to talk about are the cyberbullying, which is the online bullying, which is really hurting people online and calling them names, leaving them out of chat groups, finding out they're left out of things on different social media channels. That is really scary, because we can't do anything about it, because we can't control it. And it seems to be happening more and more, especially with teens, I would say. And then relational bullying is the 4th type, which is also really concerning. And it happens a lot with girls starting in middle school and going to high school, where they leave kids out of issues things that are going on. They don't include them in things. They're left out of group chats. They're not included in activities. And and it can be really that quick, where one day they're your friend and the next day it's gone. And literally they don't know what happened, why they're not friends anymore. And it's really damaging to kids. And a lot of girls are experiencing this in middle school and high school. So I'm most concerned right now about the bullying that happens online and the relational bullying, because I think those are the 2 that are the most concerning right now.
So I've read that bullying is worse these days, since we've entered and kind of hit this plateau of the COVID pandemic. Is that true?
I don't know about that, because what I was seeing in some of the clients that I had is, during the pandemic, the social pressures were decreased significantly, because you weren't having to go to school, you weren't having to interact with those people every day.
Mhm.
So sometimes the bullying could decrease. Other times it could increase it, where they had friends maybe when they started before the pandemic, and then after the pandemic, they're no longer friends with these other kids. I mean, that happened a lot to kids too. And I don't know if that was because of bullying necessarily. I think the pandemic contributed more to another risk factor of fear that was put into our tweens and our teens about life and things that can happen that are really scary. So I think that really added more to it.
Okay. Um, at the top of the show, we talked about. I mentioned that bullying is a major factor in youth mental health crisis. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? How it contributes and what we as adults can do about that?
Yeah, so the youth mental health crisis, since I would say the pandemic, it used to be 1 in 5, and now it's 1 in 3 kids are having mental health and learning issues. We've seen an increase that's very significant, and that's why it is considered a youth mental health crisis. And so we really need to help kids get past this time. And bullying is one of those aspects, I believe, of the crisis, which is under that whole umbrella. It's one of those aspects. And I think that we need to give kids skills, life skills, to really help them launch and get through these difficult times. Because fear was placed, I think, in everybody on different levels the last couple of years. And we have to feel like we can feel hopeful again, and we can have a community that works together and can rise up to the occasion of what's gone on and really help other kids and navigate through these difficult times. And bullying would be one of those things I think that we have to work on with our coping skills.
Okay. Okay. And what type of coping skills?
I think the 3 E's are a great one, with the empathy, the empowerment, and engagement. I think that's really good to help kids learning how to, and parents to talk to kids, not even just about bullying, but other issues. I also think we have something that we do called the ABCs of friendship, which I love, because the ABCs of friendship talk about what's an A friend. Is an A friend a friend that you can call on a moment's notice and they're going to be there for you? Even as adults, I don't think we have that many of those. I think it's more B's and C's, and then the B's are good friends and they're going to be there for you, but you can't rely on them in like a moment's notice. And then you have the C friends, which are more your acquaintances that you see in the hall, you work on group projects with, but you're not super close. And when I talk to kids about this, it really helps them understand friendships. And I was just talking to a client the other night, an adolescent, about this whole issue, and reminding her when she's trying to find a new peer group and how hard that is for her right now in high school, what that looks like, and how you can use those ABCs of friendships to navigate the kinds of friends you'd like to have and are looking for at the same time.
Okay. That's important information. So if I always find it interesting especially with our tweens, somebody is a best friend.
Yes.
And you see as an adult, that's not a best friend.
Yes. Yes,
What
that's
do we
right.
do? What do we do? Do we just let it stand, or do
So
we?
the way that I handle that is I do talk about it through the ABCs of friendship. But the other thing that I like to do is ask them for the 5 qualities they want in a friend. And I ask them to write it down somewhere so they can visually see it and remind themselves that those are the things that matter to them about friendship. And it really can help as a visual to remind kids about what's important, what's a good friend. And a lot of times, to your point, I think we have to teach kids about what good friendships look like. And that's why even adults like the ABCs of friendship, because it helps them understand their own relationships, and then they can teach that to their children.
Okay. So you've mentioned a couple of times the 3 E's approach to friendship. And I want to know a little bit more about that. We started with empathy. You mentioned empathy a couple of
Right.
times.
So it can be used to talk about friendships. It's for bullying in my book, but it's really about empathy, which is, I don't think we learn as grown-ups and even kids how to be empathic. I think it's something either learned in school or through time and experience. And so I think parents fairly don't always know what empathy is. And it's really understanding the experience of others. And so, especially when it comes to your kids, and that's a really triggering thing when someone hurts your child, rightfully so, you want to protect them and do whatever you can. And so, empathy is really asking them and taking a step back. And I encourage parents to do this when they're calm. I think that's a really important piece, because if parents are feeling escalated and they're trying to be empathic to their children, that's going to be a problem, because the kids are going to pick up on the teens that mom's upset, and they're going to want to take care of mom and dad and not be able to have their own feelings at that moment. So it's really important when you decide you're in a calm place, you're not escalated yourself or feeling triggered. And so we ask them, how do you feel? And then if they said, I don't know, I'm not sure, you can say, I'm wondering if, but it's always asked as a question, because that gives kids latitude to come back to you and say, oh, wait, no, this is really how I'm feeling, and this is what it looks like for me. And that gives them some space to come back and say, oh, okay, I have some power here. I can talk about how I feel. And then we go to empowerment, which is really empowering kids. How do you want to handle problems? I'm a really big believer in parents being guides, but not doing things for kids. They need to learn how to do things, especially when they're tweens and teens. It's the timing that's so important and crucial. And part of this crisis we're in is how to get out of it, which is teaching these skills. How do you want to handle the problem, and giving them some ownership back, and maybe helping guide them, not just leaving them to figure it out, but saying, hey, what do you think about this? Do you want to role play the situation where you felt bad that you were not included in this text message, and you might want to say something to your friends, or what do you want to do? Let's figure out a plan. If they say, no, 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 I've got it, because they're a teen, that's when parents do intervene. And it's really important to say, hey, I know you probably got it, but let's just review in case, just for different situations and what comes up. Let's just have a review. And that's where the guidance comes in. It's not to pressure them, but it's like, hey, let's just look at all obstacles that could come up for you. And then we have the engagement, which is the follow through to the plan. Hey, did that go really well when we role played that other day about how to respond about being left out of that chat group? No? Okay, do you want to practice some other things? And if it comes up again, do you want to come back and do this at a later time? I'm going to check back with you as the parent and make sure that you're okay, because I love you and I care about you, and I want to make sure you feel okay. And sometimes kids can't come forward a lot with bullying because they want to handle problems themselves, particularly when they're teens and tweens. They don't want to ask for help. But I think if we leave a space for kids, and we create that space where they know they're loved and cared about and not judged, they do come back around. I tell this a lot to parents, whether it's fathers who have more conflict with their daughters, or any parent with their relationships. It's always good to just leave that space open and letting them know in a loving manner and a delivery that's kind. I'm here for you. I love you. I want the best for you.
I'm smiling because I'm sure most parents have been through this. Your child is being bullied, and it triggers you because either you were, or because it's your baby.
That's exactly right.
So you're trying to calm, and you're trying to work them through it. And you're using these steps. Is it okay for us to admit to them that this really bothers me too? Or will that get them more excited?
No, it's actually okay to do that. What I always say to parents, and whatever they say and do with their kids, is that's fine. If you say things that you think later are mistakes, go ahead and do it. And parents look at me and think, why are you telling us to make mistakes, Danielle, with our kids? And I'm saying, no, I'm not telling you that. But kids really care about the repair. So repairing and going back to kids with mistakes of things that you say is so powerful. I cannot tell you how many times I've worked on that with parents about repairing, because that's the piece that you model differently than what maybe their experience, particularly if they're being bullied, let's just say, as an example. Mm-hmm. And so that repair is huge. God, I'm really sorry I said that to you. I feel bad, and of course I'm upset that someone's hurting you. And so I do think it's okay to say that, but I think you have to be careful how heated you are, how triggered you are, because then you don't want your child to take care of you. That's the last thing you're wanting if you're going to do a dialogue to help them and support them in this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are the signs? How do we know if our kid is being bullied or if they are the bully? Because as we discussed, there are three sides to this, right? There's the bully, the bullied, and the bystander. So how do we know?
Okay, so let's start with, how do the kids know if they're being bullied? The biggest thing that I see all the time is a drop in grades. So when the grades start to go down and you're seeing a change, I think that's one of the most important signs that there's something going on. If they start to isolate more in their classroom, are they coming home with bruises on them? Are they not talking and coming out? Are the friends that used to be there no longer hanging out at the house? They're not wanting to do anything. They stay in their room all the time. They seem depressed. They seem lonely. These are all signs that you really want to look at for possibility of being bullied. So, and the bully themselves, what I think happens a lot is it's role modeled for them somewhere. Somewhere in their lives, it's role modeled that someone is a bully and they were maybe bullied younger or felt less than. And so they feel they have to go after other people. So we have to help both. We have to help bullies learn different ways of coping, and that being mean is not a way to help them really deal with what's going on inside of them with their own anger and frustration that they may be experiencing. The bystander is a little more complicated, and positive bystanders are wonderful where they stand up for kids who are being bullied. But I'm going to be realistic with you and honest. That doesn't happen very often. And when it does, it's great that someone has that kind of integrity and love and care. But most kids don't want to get in the middle of a fight or a disagreement between two people that are their friends usually. So what I ask kids to do that I think is fair is say, hey, you still have a voice. And they'll say, well, what do you mean you still have a voice? And I'll say, you don't have to say anything in that moment, but you can go back and check on that other person and say, hey, are you okay? I know this really hurt. Are you just wanted to check in on you? Because that way you're still paying attention and letting the person know that you care. But most kids, I'm going to promise you this, are not going to get in the middle of other kids and stand up. Sometimes they will. I'm not saying it never happens, but I want parents to be realistic of expectations that they can expect from their for their kids.
Okay. Okay. Great. What trends are you seeing in this area? Are you seeing, you said that you don't think that there's more bullying now as compared to before the shutdown, but are you seeing any trends? Are we doing better preparing students to be bystanders or?
No, not at all. It's really been very difficult, I think. What I see happening a lot, and this has socially gone on probably for years, is that there are groups that develop through middle school and high school of friendships. And what happens is if you get out of that group, you can't go into another group. It is that significant. I have had so many conversations with my teens and tweens about this, that if they've formulated a group and they're having issues with some of the kids and they want to kind of hang out and get to know some of the other kids, it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to be let in and be a part of and included. And what happens a lot of those are closed groups by a certain time, especially in high school. So what's happening is kids are being mean to other kids. They're leaving them out of things. They're ignoring them. And so the bullying can ensue that way too, because they are just not part of that inner circle because they didn't have that before and they're wanting to change. They can't. And so kids are trying to figure out strategically, how do I have people to talk to at school? How do I still engage with people? And it's really a hard situation.
So what can we do? You talked about the 3 E's, but what can we do? Perhaps some real practical tips. If we see this happening, if we see that our student, for some reason, it could be a social misstep, or it could be a very good reason that, perhaps the friends in their group are vaping and they don't want to do that. But now they're without a group because there's no entry into another group. How can we help them?
I think we help them find other things that they like to do, maybe that are outside of school, where they can meet other kids, or clubs in schools where they can go at lunchtime and talk with other kids who maybe have commonalities to things they like to do. The drama club, the debate team, other places where they feel they can meet other kids and be around other kids with things that they like to do that are separate from the other kids that they're trying to fit in with. And it's still really difficult, but at least if they can feel good about something and a group and feel like they're doing something they're enjoying, it can decrease some of that lonely feeling.
Okay. So if we can help them, we know perhaps join a team or something, a community team rather than the school team if they were playing a sport, or if they like to dance, maybe take some classes at a community center where they have them, or perhaps volunteer.
Right. They can do that too. And if there's clubs in school that they want to join because they want to be with people at lunchtime and don't want to feel alone and like they can't hang out with these other groups, there's clubs at school that they can join, and teachers are usually in them. And I think that can also help them not feel so alone, and maybe doing something to refocus their attention so they're not thinking about how left out they're feeling at all times.
Okay. Now, if we see that our student is the bully, and that they have learned probably somewhere along the way in the family that being mean is the response to stress, how do we help them learn different coping mechanisms?
I think we find out why they're bullying, what it's about, why they feel they're doing that. And I would do it one-on-one. And the way I would go about it is really key to getting a bully to change their behavior, which is I do not recommend ever letting them know they're in trouble because they did X, Y, and Z to a certain person, because they'll go back and re-victimize that other kid and just be more careful about it and strategic. And that won't help the bully understand their own behavior better. So I think you have to approach it. One of the things in one of the groups I knew about many years ago that did anti-bullying work is they had a group of kids, and the bully was in the group, and they said, hey, we're going to solve a problem today. What are some solutions to this problem? And this kid is being bullied, and the bully's in this group to solve the problem in a positive way. So I think we help positive ways to get bullies to change their behavior with how do you help a bully in this situation? What do you do? And not just focusing on them and them being bad unless it's something so significant that of course it has to be addressed. It's a much better way to get kids to listen and change the behavior. But if we come at them like you're in trouble, you did this to X, Y, and Z, this isn't okay, you need to stop it right now. That's the worst thing you can do, because they'll do it again. They're going to do it and re-victimize the kid who's being bullied.
Okay. So make sure that they're involved in the process, as with most things at this age group.
That's right. Right. Because they need to be, and they need to understand other ways that kids can cope, and that they can do things differently than be mean, and why that's going on. So you have to be very careful how you approach it.
Okay. I'm going to bring us all the way back to the beginning, because I was looking at your book this weekend, and I found it fascinating at the very beginning when you talk about empathy, and you talk about when parents think they're empathetic with their children, but they're not quite there, but we think they're there. And it resonated with me because I have made the mistake of believing. So I think that I can't be the only one. Can you help us there and tell us what true empathy is, and the mistake that a lot of parents make believing that we're empathetic with our children?
So, and I want to say, first of all, it makes sense because you're a parent and you're protective of your child. So I want to put that out there first. So for instance, I'll give you an example that might be helpful. I was talking to a parent one time about his kid who was being bullied on a baseball team. So the kid would come off the field and start crying hysterically, and the parent was pissed off. It wasn't okay. He wanted to talk to the coach and have this other kid benched, whatever. So what I do with parents when they're upset about things that are going on and don't know how to be empathic because they're in that angry place about just what happened, I try to get them to look at the bigger picture. So with this father, I go, so then what happens? He's like, what do you mean? It's going to stop, Danielle. And I said, well, no, it's not, because what's going to happen when you actually talk to a coach, or you have this kid spoken to, and your child doesn't handle it, he's going to be re-victimized on that team, and it's going to be worse, and they're just going to be more sneaky about it. So I think it's really important, if parents aren't being empathetic and there's anger coming out or frustration, we're really careful with who we talk to about that. So, and if you do come out in a way like we talked about before, angry or not empathic, we apologize and we repair. Again, it goes back to that whole issue about repair. Repairing anything that you feel you made a mistake with is the best thing for kids. They love it. They love to hear that mom and dad can come back around and have a conversation about something that didn't feel right to both of them. And so you can always repair if you're not feeling you're being empathic. And I think, to be fair to parents, well, we don't learn how to be empathic. I learned it in graduate school, and growing up, because my mother was a psychologist. So she role modeled that for me growing up. But if you don't have that, how are you supposed to know how to be empathic? Which is why I talk about it a lot in my book and give examples to help parents understand what that looks like and when to do that.
One of your examples that helped me a lot is instead of saying, I know that upset you, or I know you're angry about, which we parents do, and we think that that's being empathic, right? I know you're angry, so let's talk about why you're angry. What we should say is, how do you feel? Stop. We're probably not going to get, I'm angry, but that's where we begin.
Yes. And how do you feel? Or if they can't, some kids aren't as verbal. So we want to put that out there as other kids saying, I'm wondering if you're feeling this way. So you can at least label a feeling for them and they can have that to work with.
When we are at the end of our time together, I want to make that I did not miss anything. Is there anything about bullying that you think that parents really need to know before we go that I may have forgotten to ask about?
So the one other thing I really think about, and this is my 8th grade teacher taught me this, and I'll never forget it, and I apply it to bullying, is knowledge is power. And the more knowledge you have, the more power you can change things. And so empowering kids to have knowledge, to know how to cope, what those coping skills look like, can make a world of difference in their emotional health and their well-being, which I know we can do with our kids. I feel very hopeful.
Oh, I'm hopeful too. Can you tell us one more time the name of your book? And we're going to put the link up again for everybody.
Yes, it's called The Empowered Child, How to Help Children Cope, Communicate, and Conquer Bullying.
Okay, and I am putting the link up now. It's been a long time since I've had to take the notes and have the conversations. I want to thank everybody for their patience with that.
Thank you.
It just tells you how much we need Jessica. Thank you so much for your time, Danielle. I really appreciate your time with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.